Hello. Um, Today I want to talk about editing, and I may hit a few other topics in that time. I'm not sure, but I want to talk about editing. Um, so right now I'm currently editing my my most recent feature, the bleh, the Book of Babylon, and it's undergone a number of edits. A lot of edits, many edits, and so what I'm doing right now is I'm going through and just putting together a version that I can show to the actors and crew and everyone that was involved, and just have one version for that. And we have dealt with a number of distributors, and that's a whole other level above uh, my ability to explain or even fully grasp at this moment. So I'm just going to leave it there and say that I'm going to have one version, and yeah, I'll likely cut it down or whatever for a to market version, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Um, but yeah, I want to talk about the process there. Now, I know originally when I started this, and it's been something that's in my mind, when I started sort of doing little bits, I broached the idea of an animation tutorial, something to that effect. And it's something I do want to do. I need to be in the mood to do it because it takes a lot of work to do, and I'm just swamped. So that's why I've been talking a lot, and I haven't shown the animation stuff. But I will. I will at some point. I don't know when exactly, but I will. I promise. Promise. So anyway, um, with editing, actually, and to bring it back to animation, everything has to do with story, and it's like story, 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 and editing, especially, of course, it's a film, but just to sort of hit on a little bit what I mean by everything comes back to story. Even with a character and a character design, I've had people ask me in the past, oh man, really love your characters, or and how do you come up with these designs? How do you come up with this? Um, and it's because I understand the story. And so what I'm doing is I'm drawing and crafting the characters to the story, what they're supposed to do, what they're meant to do, all of these other things. So let's say in the project I'm working on, Nightfall, one of them, we have these characters called Vengeance models, and they're these sort of assassin types, and within the character design of these characters, and they do all sorts of stuff. They're jumping over obstacles and stabbing people with their swords, and stuff's blowing up, and they're being shot at, and all this kind of business. Now, in the film Nightfall, what we see there is there's this one character V1, and she's a vengeance model, and so she is on a mission, and that mission requires her to be stealthy. Now, it's pretty straightforward just to say, okay, well, the current existing outfit works just fine, but the art director in me then jumps in and says, well, but what can we do with this that really makes this exciting, really gets people involved? And also, this movie's set in the future, and so it utilizes that concept. And again, it's because I know the story. And so now her outfit will change colors depending on what environment that she's in to sort of blend in a little better and to deal with those. And this is only possible, again, because I understand the story, and not just, well, it's a sci-fi movie, it should do that. A lot of times you could just start off and say, well, I have this sci-fi thing that I want to do, and it's going to be neat, and da 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 da. But if you don't know that she's going to be hunting around all this stuff, the idea may not come to you to say, oh, well, she should blend in with those environments because of what she's doing. It's not necessarily surveillance, because you could say, okay, well, you could just, in the future, they have really long telescopes, so you could just be really far away, and why would you need your outfit to change color? Um, and so all that comes into story. And so now back to the film aspect of it. What's really interesting is, and I say interesting, the first live action film that I had made, well, actually the very first. Let me back up a little bit to an origin story. So I have another project, an animated project called Ghost Police, which has gone through a number of iterations. There was sort of an anime version wherein these it was very fantasy based, and then we met with an anime group, Funimation, and we all talked about the idea of making a film. and we then, Tony and myself, well, D7 Studios, we were taking D7 Peacemaker, and we were in talks with some film studios about doing that as live action. And through that process, we then merged this anime idea more into a live action, which was called Ghost Police. And what we had planned to do, what I had planned to do, was shoot a demo, which is, it's like a short of the movie, the opening bits of the movie. So I had all this planned, because we'd also planned to shoot Midnight Clear live action. And so it's a script that I've written, Midnight Clear, and wanted to shoot live action. And I just thought, well, I should have some experience making a live action film before making a live action feature film. In the end, I actually didn't do the demo for Ghost Police because there was some participation issues. But just, well, I say participation, there were scheduling issues. And so when you don't have all your troops on the ground, it's a little leery about just running out there and trying to pull something together, and which is another thing. With an anime, you can put in different voices, whatever. When you're doing live action, I mean, if someone's not there, they're not there. And you can rewrite on the fly, but if they're not there, they're not there. And so I just decided to sort of pass on that. And the first thing I actually did was this short film competition movie called Takeout with my cousin David. And that was kind of a fiasco, if you will. It turned out great, but it was a fiasco just filming the process. So I learned very quickly there were so many compromises involved in doing a live action. I learned that from the first film, Midnight Clear. So on to the film that I'm editing now, Babylon, and I went from, okay, I understand these compromises that you have to make on set when you're translating something from a script to a live action, or at least I thought I understood. I mean, you learn, but there's so much more to learn, I think is what I mean. But then story walked in the door, and suddenly I had this idea, and now I'm having to make these changes, and it's a big action film, and I'm like, oh great. You're trying to keep track of the story and what's going on, and so many things happen with Babylon because it's an action film. So you have a number of things that are going to occur. You have a number of unforeseen issues that are going to happen, and they're a lot bigger than just logistical or scheduling or whatever. I mean, they're big, and you're like, oh man, what do we do? And while doing that, you lose your way a little bit. And of course, as a director, it's my responsibility to keep all of that together. And so I'm gonna do that to the best of my ability. But now I'm in the edit, and I'm looking at all the footage and everything from that. Now I've done a number of edits. The first edit I did was almost 2.5 hours long, and everyone liked it. Well, I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, everyone agreed the film needed to be cut down, but I received really positive reviews on it. The problem was cutting the movie down. And the script was 2 hours long. Actually, the script was 2 hours and 10 minutes long. So technically speaking, it was actually pretty close to the screenplay. Oh man, only I could make a 2.5 hour cut and send it to distributors too, which is great. So cutting down has been sort of the real challenge, if you will. And we've actually had a number of distribution deals, so I've cut the movie down, finished that whole thing out. Things way beyond my control occurred, and now I'm editing the movie again for a second or another distributor, and then rinse, wash, repeat. And then now I'm at this place where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do another version until all that gets itself figured out. Just to have. So this is where I'm at. Now what's interesting there is, from a story standpoint, is I am having to do some rearranging. Now, I do want to segue into a discussion about weakness and specifically my weaknesses, and in the notion that it may help other guys out there, other guys, anyone doing creative or whatever. But I don't want to segue from my main topic right now because I do that a lot. A weakness. So, so with story, what I had to do is I'll with Babylon, I'll create these big puzzles, and I think that's because it's the way my mind works is in puzzles. My mom's a mathematician, and so I think I've always been doing sort of equations in my head. And one of the I was in all these math competitions when I was a kid. And you quickly blow through the whole your basic stuff, and you end up. I remember one competition. in like one of the final rounds, if you will. It was like a 5 page, or not a 5 page, I'm sorry, 5 1 page equations. So, and I know for the true mathematicians out there, that's small potatoes, but for a little scrapper like me, it was like, oh my gosh. But so it's like a page long, and you have to sort of prove everything or solve everything and show everything, and so you have this thing, and I think that affected me in creativity years later. Um, and nowadays, I'm lucky if I can solve a, like a 3-digit equation, let alone a 1 pager. But that's how this film worked. It's like a giant puzzle, and you have to put all these pieces together. And the problem is, you start moving pieces. It's like Jenga. The whole thing's like, come crashing down. And so that's in the difficulty is I'm moving all these pieces, and I don't want the whole thing to come crashing down. And it's challenging. And the bigger challenge, I know literally, I feel like anyway, I know every single aspect of this film, every shot, every cut, every this, every that, and so it's hard to take yourself out of that and watch the film from a purely audience standpoint, where I've never seen this film before, I don't know what's happening, and let me craft this and really be the audience, and so that's challenging. And so I've had to take my story to another level, wherein I then look at the characters like I don't know them, and then think, okay, what are you doing, and what is it that you want, and are you achieving that? And each of these characters should be, working to achieve their goal, and then, so I'll try and line all that footage up, because I am really having to move some pieces around. And I mean, parts that were supposed to be at the end, I'm putting sort of near the opening. A reshoot that I did, I'm putting that in the opening. I'm moving a huge part that's always been there out of there and moving it down to the after the titles. And so it's like there's so many things going on. And we're talking with the Jenga pile, where, or not even that, because those are wooden blocks, and so there's a structure there. It's hard to explain, but really when you start moving pieces like that around in a story that's really relies on itself, you're talking about timing, pacing, a number of things that need to come together to make sure all of that works. And I'm not entirely sure that's going to work just yet, but I'm crossing my fingers, and we'll see. I'm really, really hoping. I think it can. But yeah. So stories is what I've been relying on with these characters and sort of their motivations to melt all of this together in the hopes that it's this nice flow that still maintains what I wanted to do in 2.5 hours, but does it in, I don't know, 100 minutes or so. I mean, I guess we'll end up seeing what the final time is on my version. Let's call this my director's cut. What that time's going to be. Yeah, that's what I'm up to. And editing, beyond story and beyond all the other parts, have some technical aspects. You basically load a movie, and then you watch that movie over and over and some people watch it from beginning to end. They're purists. I don't necessarily do that all the time, just because it takes so much time and I'm watching so many things. For instance, in Babylon, in some scenes we had 4 cameras running. Now those things are shooting 2-3 minute shots, and those shots we could have done 4 or 5 shots of the same scene. So you're looking at, I could be sitting there for 45 minutes just watching, trying to grab a 30-second scene if I watched from beginning to end every single thing I was doing every single time I loaded it. So I don't really do that. What I do is I'll load something up, and I have an idea because I remember the performance and I remember what was going on, so I can just watch a few seconds and know, okay, this is not what I'm looking for. This is not what I'm looking for. This is not what okay, this is what I'm looking for, I think. And then I'll watch it, and I'm like, oh God, someone wasn't wearing a glove, someone wasn't doing this, who jumped in the shot, what's going on? There's that. So you'll watch a movie, and then I grab it and I put it into the timeline. I'll use Premiere, and I'll also use Final Cut Pro X. Since I started editing Babylon in Premiere, I'm sticking with that for now, but they're both good packages. It's interesting because there's a difference. With Premiere, when you load everything up, you get this process where it's the part where it's trying to compress the videos, and so it's very difficult to work while this is going on. So basically, you can open up a project and you have to sit there forever until it's done. Final Cut Pro X, you drop everything in and you're doing your thing, but it then tries to save all the files. So in essence, you start losing just a ton of file space in some drive that you're not even aware of. Usually it's your master drive, to be able to just watch it and go. So each of them have their benefits and things they do well and things they don't do so well. But that's the editing software packages that I use. Uh, Beyond that, beyond the editing process, the other process that comes in there, and the more challenging one, is then syncing the audio up. With Babylon, we shot the audio separately, and it was never synced with the footage, and so now that's one of the things that I have to do is go and reattach all those things together. So that that's sort of the editing process, and of course the final process of that, once you've attached the audio, once you've synced all that and lip synced it and done everything you needed to do, is then rendering out, which is basically mashing all the movies together down into one movie. And so that process is sort of the last step, and it's kind of a cool process because it's a bit of a waiting process, which means you basically get to go and do something else besides sit in front of the computer all day and watch that thing do its thing. And so that's that, because sometimes it could take, in older computers, you're looking like an hour, and my newer system, I think it's, generally about, maybe as long as about 10 to 15 minutes. But hey, you get a 10 to 15 minute break. So that's sort of the last leg of the editing process. From a real basic standpoint, I mean, sometimes there's other things going on, like if you're trying to do split screens, which is one of the things I want to do in the Book of Babylon. There's this whole other thing where you have to edit basically two different movies, the same movie twice, and then you overlay them and you do this stuff and a software package called After Effects, but that's more compositing and finishing, but it's still part of the editing process. So that's that process. Now, I know I said I wanted to talk about another topic in terms of weaknesses and things like that, but I'll probably say that for another time. I've got a lot of stuff to do, and in my thought process, that stuff's creeping up on me. So I will say goodbye for now. Hopefully something I've said has been maybe helpful or eventful, or, well, I don't know about eventful, but helpful in any right. And glad to share any information I have. All right, guys. Thanks. Later. Peace. Hook 'em.